All right. Daniel chapter 4 is our chapter tonight, but we're going to start in Matthew 24, and let me find out why. I'll read this to you. In Daniel 4, verse 3 says this: "How great are his signs, and how mighty are his wonders. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and his dominion is from generation to generation." That is, God's kingdom outshines any of man's, even though all these men have tried to make a kingdom, that's going to last forever and ever. And that's how we were introduced to Nebuchadnezzar, is he was laying in bed thinking about what's going to be the hereafter. After I'm dead and gone, what are these generations that'll come after me do with all this good stuff I've given them? That's what he's thinking. Matthew 24, verse 14. Matthew 24:14. There's a kingdom coming that'll be a real one. Hitler wanted to set up a 1,000-year reign. He was wanting to be an imitation of the millennium. There's a real one coming, and that'll be a good one. That's the kingdom that's a coming. Matthew 24:14. "And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness to all nations, and then shall the end come." Okay, so the end comes after the preaching of the gospel of the kingdom. Obviously, that can't be the end of the kingdom. It's the end of the invitation to join the kingdom. So this gospel they're preaching of the kingdom, of course, is Jewish. It's millennial. It's not church age. But that's the kingdom that Nebuchadnezzar is speaking of here. Now, our text in, Daniel 4, verse 3, he says it's an everlasting kingdom, and his, speaking of God, dominion is from generation to generation. That is, it's going to continue. He's not going to have to worry about anybody coming in and de-seating him from the throne. Nobody's going to be a bigger... that's the problem in these ancient times. The throne was not safe. Even if you could maintain, for a few years the throne, that didn't mean that the people that today were worshiping you, tomorrow would decide they wanted it. And the military usually came in and took over. Psalm 145, verse 13. Psalm 145:13. In Daniel, he said, from generation to generation. Here's the same thing, but a little different wording. He says, "Thy kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and thy dominion endureth through all generations." Now, who's writing this? This is David writing in the Psalms. Therefore, God's ruling back in David's day, and he says it's everlasting and throughout all generations. So it is true, the Jews are waiting for the kingdom to come, but God's the one ruling in every kingdom. From the beginning of time, God is the master overseer of everything. And it doesn't matter how much authority he lends off to the devil to have, from time to time. He's still the one in control. We'll see if we get there. At some point tonight, we'll see it, that the devil can't move without God saying, you can do this or that. Furthermore, the good angels in heaven can't either. They all require a sign-off from God to move. So he is ruling in all kingdoms one way or another. Now, it doesn't mean that his ruling makes you have all the things that you want right now. Because sometimes it'll be like Nebuchadnezzar. It'd be like Nero for Paul. Those men were put in place by God for the time, but it wasn't pleasant. But God will protect you in the meantime. In our passage here, God's about to give Nebuchadnezzar a realization that he said the right thing. Nebuchadnezzar says he's the Most High God, and that's true. A lot of times you'll find people say things that they don't understand. They're just saying it. You'll hear some people around you, if they know you're a Christian, they'll say, praise the Lord, or they'll say something like that, and you can just tell it's not real. It's just something they're saying for your benefit. Then God will put them in a situation where it will be real, and they'll have a chance to use it the right way. That's what's going on with Nebuchadnezzar. He's about to find out God really is the Most High. Daniel 4, verse 4. Daniel 4, verse 4. I, Nebuchadnezzar, was at rest in mine house, and flourishing in my palace. Sounds like the good times have come to stay. I saw, flourishing in my palace, I saw a dream which made me afraid, and the thoughts upon my bed and the visions of my head troubled me. Therefore made I a decree to bring in all the wise men of Babylon before me, that they might make known unto me the interpretation of the dream. This has become a habit. That's how we were introduced to him, is he had a dream. And he must be pretty skittish. He was scared. This is the second time he's gotten scared from a nightmare. Verse 7. Then came in the magicians, the astrologers, the Chaldees, the soothsayers, and I told the dream before them. Okay, so they are at ease now because he told them what the dream is. It's easier to make up a lie if you've already gotten part of it done for you. So now he's simply said, here's what it is, tell me what it means. But they're a little scared to make up something to this guy because he doesn't play. And what if two of them come up with a different explanation for what the dream is? They probably had a union, and the union boss said, boys, we're just going to not say anything because we want to keep our head intact. But they did not make known unto me the interpretation thereof. But at the last came in before me. The last Daniel came in before me. Now, I see this happen, and I think I would be the same way. I think Daniel's like, I don't even want to be associated with those clowns over there. Let them go in and do their thing. I don't even want to show up at the same time they did. He was fashionably late. He waits until they have fallen on their face, and then he comes in with the real deal. Came in before me, whose name was Belteshazzar, according to the name of my God, and in whom is the spirit of the holy gods. And before him I told the dream, saying, O Belteshazzar, master of the magicians, because I know that the spirit of the holy gods is in thee, and no secret troubleth thee. He's already told him, I think that you have something I don't. No dream, no interpretation is going to scare you, but yet I was scared, therefore I need your help. Tell me the visions of my dream that I have seen, and the interpretation thereof. Now, nobody makes a big deal about this, but it seems to me like Daniel wasn't present when he told the dream. We saw that previous. The other boys got the interpretation, or the dream that he had. Daniel comes in. He says, I know this boy. I don't even have to tell him what I was dreaming. He says to Daniel, tell me the dream and the interpretation. Tell me the vision of my dream that I've seen and the interpretation thereof. He's starting out behind the 8 ball, it seemed like, except for he's already had one experience with Nebuchadnezzar where he did the very same thing. He came in and he told him what the dream was, then the interpretation. Nebuchadnezzar says, I want a redo of what we did before. But he didn't give that option to the other boys. Look at it in Daniel 2, verse 1. Daniel 2:1. And in the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar dreamed dreams, wherewith his spirit was troubled, and his sleep brake from him. That is, he scared him so bad he woke up from the dream. That's some people. I've done this. I don't know what it is. I've been falling asleep and then all of a sudden just wake up like I was catching myself falling or something. And it's a shock to the system, but it wakes you wide awake. He's doing that with a nightmare. The thing was so scary it woke him up.
It says he had more than one, though. So he dreamed dreams.
Sure, probably the same dream over and over.
Yeah. Saturday or Sunday.
Mm-hmm. Daniel 4, verse 5. Daniel 4, verse 5. I saw a dream which made me afraid, and the thoughts upon my bed and the visions in my head troubled me. God likes to use this stuff. All the way through the Old Testament, you see him using it over and over. Dreams and visions, that's how he spoke to them. And that's how I got saved, was getting scared in a dream. I dreamed I was going to hell, and I had a plan to get out. I was going to Bible Baptist, had a good upbringing, and so I knew I was going to hell at 5 years old. and my great plan was this: I'll preach to the devil and he'll kick me out. That was my 5-year-old mind. But that's what God uses, is he'll scare you in order to show you. See, what that does is it starts a man with the fear of God. You can get him to that point, then he can move. It's just like a car without power steering. Remember those days? A car without power steering, if you can get it moving, you can steer it. If you can get a man afraid of God, you can steer him toward God. Daniel 4, look at verse 19. Daniel 4, verse 19. Unknown to the king, this stuff makes Daniel scared too. Daniel 4, verse 19. Then Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, was astonished for 1 hour, and his thoughts troubled him. The king spake and said, Belteshazzar, let not the dream or the interpretation thereof trouble thee. Well, easy for you to say. Belteshazzar answered and said, My lord, the dream be to them that hate thee, and the interpretation thereof to thine enemies. He may have been scared because of the actual dream itself. It was enough to scare the king. Of course, the king is taking it personal. But now Daniel's got to be the person who comes in and says, you're going down and your enemies are going to win. That'd be scary too. Daniel 5, look at verse 6. Daniel 5, verse 6. It's like over and over God's trying to scare these people so he can bless them. That's what he did when the children of Israel came out. He came down on Sinai. He put it on a smoke and put lightning and all this stuff around it. He said, build a barrier around it. Tell them if they get close to it, I'll kill them. And Moses comes down finally to steal the people and says, look, don't be afraid. God's just come to scare you. so that his fear will be before you. And that's what's healthy, is God scares you so that his fear will be in front of you, so whatever you see, it can't out-fear the fear that you have of him. Daniel 5, verse 6. Is that where we are? Then the king's countenance was changed, and his thoughts troubled him, so that the joints of his loins were loosened. His knees smote one against another. Now he's scared again. All the way through, these people are getting scared. Look at Daniel verse 9, Daniel 5, 9. Then was King Belshazzar greatly troubled, and his countenance was changed in him, and his lords were astonished. Verse 10. Now the queen, by reason of the words of the king and his lords, came into the banquet house, and the queen spake and said, O king, live forever. Let not thy thoughts trouble thee, nor let thy countenance be changed. I want you to see a word that's being used. We understand from all of these accounts they're scared. That's not the word they're using. The word that's being used is not he was scared. It's troubled. That's what the devil uses on us now, is trouble. Usually you're not scared, you're troubled. Now the trouble that you see coming up in the near future or whatever it is in your life, that trouble will try to scare you, that's true. But your idea is the trouble, whatever the situation is, that's the problem. Here God himself said, I'm the trouble. I'm showing up to scare him. And that's what he did. Daniel 7 verse 15. Daniel 7 verse 15. It says, I, Daniel, was grieved in my spirit in the midst of my body, and the visions of my head troubled me. Whole bunch of trouble going on. That's what Job said. Job said, man's born to trouble as the sparks fly upward. We're going to have trouble because on the other side, you're not going to see any trouble. You got to pay your dues now. You pay your dues now and it'll pay off on the long haul. Daniel 7 verse 22. Daniel 7, I said 22. Daniel 7:28. 7:28. Hitherto is the end of the matter. Okay, good. We got the conclusion. As for me, Daniel, my cogitations much troubled me, and my countenance changed in me, but I kept the matter in my heart. Sometimes that's what you have to do. He says of Mary that she heard all these things and she kept them pondered them in her heart. Sometimes that's what you have to do. It's not always wise to open your mouth about what's troubling you, because you might get some advice that isn't good and you draw attention to it from the wrong sources. Daniel 4 verse 10. Daniel 4 verse 10. And just to get through the chapter, we're going to kind of just try to breeze through the chapter, and then we'll go back and pick up the actual dream and do an interpretation of it. Daniel 4:10. Thus were the vision of my head in my bed. I saw and behold a tree in the midst of the earth, and the height thereof was great. The tree grew and was strong, and the height thereof reached unto heaven, and the sight thereof to the end of the earth, to the end of the earth. Of all earth, all the earth. The leaves thereof were fair, and the fruit thereof much, and in it was meat for all. The beast of the field had shadow under it, and the fowls of the heaven dwelt in the what is that? Boughs. How come I can't read that? I never can read that word. The boughs thereof, and all flesh was fed of it. I saw in the visions of my head upon my bed, and behold, a watcher, and an holy one came down from heaven. That's a mysterious thing right there. He cried aloud and said thus, hew down the tree and cut off his branches, shake off his leaves and scatter his fruit. Let the beast get away from under it, and the fowls from his branches. Nevertheless, leave the stump of the root in the earth, even with a band of iron and brass in the tender grass of the field, and let it be wet with the dew of heaven, and let his portion be with the beast of the grass of the earth. Now, he called it his portion. So whatever this tree is considered a male. We're going to cut him down and leave his stump. Let his portion be, so forth, so on. Verse 16. Let his heart be changed from a man's, and let a beast's heart be given unto him. And let 7 times pass over him. Okay, you understand what times are. He's referring to years. 7 years. They use the same thing in Revelation, times, and a half a time. Verse 17. This matter is by the decree of the watchers, and by the demand of the word of the holy ones, to the intent that the living may know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdoms of men, and giveth it to whomsoever he will, and setteth up over it the basest of men. Now, who's ruling and who's given? Obviously, the most high ruler is Jesus or God. When Jesus Christ is at his temptations, the devil claims to be God. He says, all these things I'll give you. No, you don't have control of that. God does. Now, it's true. The devil seems to have the majority of the people on this globe serving him. So in essence, it's as though it's already his kingdom, because they're his subjects. However, it's not as it appears. David says this, I've seen the wicked in great power and spreading himself like a green bay tree. Now, our story here is showing Nebuchadnezzar as this tree. That's why Nebuchadnezzar was scared. He woke up and he had a sneaking suspicion that was about him. You'll find over and over when Jesus was on earth and he was letting them have it, the disciples or the Pharisees would say, when you said that, you made us mad too. He didn't care. That's why he did it. That's what this dream is. He woke up in a cold sweat from this dream and said, they're chopping me down. And you notice the other thing was he took out a human heart of this man and installed a beast's heart. Now you can say that's flowery speech, but I don't think it is. When God says he's going to do something, he does it. And guess what? He's super duper over all of what we call natural. He's supernatural. So he can do any of these things he says he can do, and I think he does. This tree is also pictured by, we say, the Catholic Church. Matthew 13. Matthew 13, verse 31. Matthew 13, 31 and 32. Another parable put he forth unto them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is like to a grain of mustard seed, which a man took and sowed in his field, which indeed is the least of all seeds. But when it is grown, it is the greatest among herbs, and becometh a tree, so that the birds of the air come and lodge in the branches thereof. Now, it seems like whatever this tree is a great resource for these birds. In the Bible, these birds are typified as foul spirits, unclean spirits. And the Catholic Church has done just that. They've been a home for every vile doctrine and evil spirit that there can be. They've been around from the beginning, and they keep it looks like they're going to be until the Antichrist shows up. They're going to join up with him. So the same goes with them, the same parable. Now you'll see this same parable keep showing up throughout time. We'll find it again in a minute. Oh, here we are. Ezekiel 31. Here it is, and it's pointing to the Antichrist. Nebuchadnezzar, of course, is a great type of the Antichrist. Ezekiel 31, verse 3. Behold, the Assyrian was a cedar in Lebanon, with fair branches and with a shadowing shroud, and of a high stature, and his top was among the thick boughs. The waters made him great. The depths set him up on high, with her rivers running round about his plants, and set out her little rivers unto all the trees of the field. You're going to find that depth stuff there. Anytime you find the deep and the depths, that's talking about something that's not on this planet. It's way up there. That's where Leviathan's playing. And he's calling him the Assyrian. All Assyrians had names. Usually they would take the name of a dead famous person. All of the rulers, the empire's rulers, would be somebody, the third, fourth, fifth, seventh, kind of like they do in England. They'll pick a name and they'll add a number to the back of it. That wasn't their real name, they're just faking. But here, instead of using a name, he just calls him the Assyrian, as though it's one individual. And it is, it's the devil. The devil's used them all. And one day he himself is showing up on this earth to run it. Verse 5, therefore his height was exalted above all the trees of the field. Okay, you find something about stature that's satanic. If you're short, you're godly. If you're, no. But it's this giants. Saul was head and shoulders above, taller than all the rest of them. It's this cedar that's above all the other trees of the garden. It's something about this. Look at verse 6. And all the fowls of heaven made their nests. See, same story. It's going one right after the other. It seems like one type of the Antichrist jumps to the next type of the Antichrist, and they all get this same story. Of course, this is probably in reference as a dual application to both Sennacherib and the Antichrist. Nebuchadnezzar, who comes after Sennacherib, when he defeats Assyria, then Babylon takes over. And now Nebuchadnezzar, God says, I'm not done, you get the dream too. Then, after that, Jesus Christ shows up telling a parable, the same thing. Matthew 13, that parable was in 13:31. Notice our reference here is Ezekiel, where did I say it? Ezekiel 31:3. It's reverse. I don't know why that is, but you'll find that over and over. God will have the same thing mirrored. By mirrored, I mean, if you look in the mirror, things turn backwards. And that's what those references just did, and it's the same story. Look at Hosea 12. Hosea 12:10. Here's why God's doing this. Hosea 12:10. He says, I have also spoken by the prophets and have multiplied visions and used similitudes by the ministry of the prophets. That is, God says, I've been using these dreams and visions to liken something. That's what the book of Proverbs is. Most of it is analogies. It's a similitude. This is similar to that. If this is true, then that has to be true. He says it's designed to make a man think. A thinking man likes the Bible. A lazy man who doesn't want to make his brain work doesn't like the Bible. Now, they might like a book that has Bible written on the front of it, but it's not a Bible. That's what's appealing about the new perversions, is they don't have much thought that's required in them. The these and the thous are taken out. I mean, that's so scary. Not only is this wicked man likened to the green bay tree, the righteous man is likened to something. Look at Psalm 92, verse 12. 92, verse 12. This is why I live in Florida. Psalm 92, 12. The righteous shall flourish like the palm tree. He shall grow like a cedar in Lebanon. Okay, so the righteous man is likened to a palm tree or a cedar in Lebanon. You notice how the devil likes to mimic something real? That was the picture of the devil, and Ezekiel was the cedar in Lebanon. So he's mimicking, he's faking the real thing. He has ministers that show up as the ministers of righteousness, but they're not. Okay, look at Psalm 1. So, you all know this one. Everybody's got Psalm 1 memorized. Psalm 1:3 says, and he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water that bringeth forth his fruit in his season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper. There's a season that you're supposed to be bearing fruit. If you find a Christian or somebody who's always on top, always having the victory, and always, got 1 million converts and everything, it's probably phony. Bible says right here he's got a season that he brings forth fruit. If that tree's bringing forth fruit year-round, there's something wrong with that tree or something wrong with that fruit. Don't eat it. A fruit tree is supposed to have a season. Like a tree, a man can produce fruit that's good or can produce fruit that's bad. I remember my great-grandfather, had an apple tree, and it had the branches were all close to the ground. I don't know how old that thing was old. And I could climb up in that apple tree. It was a great climbing tree. And I remember climbing up in that tree one day and just sitting there eating an apple thinking how great this is until I saw half a worm. That fruit wasn't no good. I lost my desire for apples after that day. But that's man. Some look good on the outside, but full of worms on the inside. Look at Matthew 7. Matthew 7, verse 17. Matthew 7:17. Now this has a tribulation application, and I'm going to show you why. He says, "Even so, every good tree bringeth forth good fruit, but a corrupt tree bringeth forth evil fruit. A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit, neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit." Verse 19. "Every tree that bringeth not forth good fruit is hewn down and cast into the fire." That obviously is not doctrine for our age, or else nobody's saved. If you're like a tree, you know you've brought forth some fruit that wasn't good at some point. And he said right there, a good tree cannot bring forth a bad fruit. That's going to be tribulation. In the tribulation, that's what 1 John is all about. If we say we love him and we don't, then we're not of him. He makes it real plain, cut and dry. You're either in him and doing right, or you're not, and you're not. Look at Luke chapter 3. Luke 3, verse 9. The parable, the tree gets cut down. Always the same. Luke 3, verse 9. "And now also the axe is laid unto the root of the trees. Every tree therefore which bringeth not forth good fruit is hewn down and cast into the fire." If you can't see work salvation in that, then you're just blind. He's saying if they're not doing good works, I'm cutting them down and I'm not making a picture frame out of them. I'm throwing them in the fire. And that's the story of Nebuchadnezzar, is one day God's going to cut him down. Every one of these stories, the parable, always does this right here. It's not immediately chopped down. It's given a space to repent. It's given a time frame before God takes the action. It's man's decision how wicked he wants to be. God has already said this was what's going to happen, and because the story repeats over and over. It seems like every man does this. He has to fall first before he realizes, hey, it was fun being able to walk. The little kid, you're teaching the kid how to walk. And they don't want to walk at first. They just want to scoot and crawl or whatever. And then eventually they want to walk. They take a couple of steps and, they're enjoying it. They're happy and laughing and everybody's all excited. And then they fall. And then they got to scoot again. And at some point they think, that walking was pretty fun. I'm tired of scooting. That's man. Now, it does not say he uprooted the tree. He said he cut the stump of it. He didn't chop it down and burn it. What we do to get rid of a tree is you chop it down and then you burn it out to get all the roots out of it so it can't come back. God's designed it so that man can get another try. Now, I don't know how many times he gives a man a try. That's between God and the individual. Look at Mark chapter 8. Mark 8, verse 24. If we wanted to get practical tonight, we could go for hours and hours, and I don't want to get practical. But he says here, Mark 8:24, he's healed a man of blindness. And he looked up and said, I see men as trees walking. Well, if he's been blind, how does he know what a tree is? He says, I see them, but they just look like trees and they're walking around. Now, you could go through all the trees and find out all the good things and the bad things about trees. And I don't just mean, most people would do that horticulturally, however you say that word. You would go find out what you know in the world about trees. And that's good and that's true, you can do that. However, the Bible's full of trees. And if the Bible talks about them, that's something God's pointing out. I want you to learn from this. So if you want a good study sometime, just look up all the trees in the Bible and study them. And what time have we gotten to? It's time. We'll pick up there next week at Daniel 4:18.